GOP infighting is taking a whole new level this morning with the Republican battle lines drawn. Axios reporting House Republicans moving closer to ousting Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney from leadership and are already considering replacing her with another female representative. This is all over Congresswoman Cheney telling the truth, refusing to back down from her criticisms of former President Trump and the lies he continues to spread about voter fraud in the last election. Congresswoman Cheney saying anyone claiming the 2020 presidential election was stolen is poisoning our democratic system. And for that, for telling the truth about the election, former President Trump is now going after Liz Cheney. And even worse, Republicans in power are letting him do it. Joining us now, NBC's John Allen and Bulwark writer at large, Tim Miller. John, in any sane world, any attempt to strike down Congresswoman Cheney over telling the truth would only make her stronger. But here's the problem. President Trump's lies have an impact. 70% of Republicans now do not believe that President Biden won. What happens now?
It's a great question, Stephanie. And the question of whether we're living in the sane world gets tested seemingly every week. I think what happens now is Republicans conference together as soon as they're back in town. Congress has been out, the House has been out, and they'll start to discuss this issue and whether they want to do something about Liz Cheney. I mean, the problem is that she's got this huge platform now. She raised $1.5 million, a personal best for her in the last quarter. She's obviously more interesting as the big foil to Trump than she is as the House Republican Conference chairwoman. So I'm not sure that the effort to silence her is going to be very effective, even if they remove her from a job that over the course of the last quarter century has essentially been, a death sentence for political careers. The last House Republican Conference chairperson to move up to the whip job or the leader's job was Dick Armey more than a quarter of a century ago. So we'll have to see what happens with her job, but her job is not the reason that she's in the news. The reason she's in the news is that she is out there telling the truth about what happened in the election and what happened on January 6th. And that's something that's very discomforting to many Republicans, including former President Donald Trump.
But how powerful, Tim, is the great foil to President Trump? If Republicans purge Congresswoman Cheney, where does she go? Where do the non-MAGA Republicans go? Your house for dinner?
Yeah, exactly. I've got 5 seats at the table here, so I'd love to have Liz over, and Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger, and I don't know who's fitting in the other seat. My husband, I guess. So, look, yeah, this is the problem, right? I mean, I think maybe this is a good long-term play for her. Who knows what the future holds, right? You know, that you can never go wrong doing what's right. But Liz Cheney doesn't have a home right now in this party, and it has nothing to do with any policy issues. It has everything to do with her willingness to pop the bubble of disreality around the election lie and to actually refreshingly say that what happened on January 6th happened. And there's just no room for this. You know, I was down in South Carolina this week, and the Republican base, is basically split between 2 camps. One, a total disreality camp that believes that Joe Biden isn't even the president or it certainly isn't rightly the president. And then another camp that is kind of rubbing Donald Trump's belly, playing along with him, kind of winking and nodding, saying they're not so sure about the election results. There's nobody in local Republican offices who is out there saying, hey, we need to move forward for this. There's just there's no interest in that among Republican voters or leaders at the state level.
Yeah, but Tim, you talked to Lynn Wood running for Republican state chair, right? This is somebody who is so far outside the norm, running for a position that is the absolute norm.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Stephanie. What he is offering is, look, there have always been kooks. I've been in Republican politics for a long time. You always had a 15% kooks. For a while, they were the Ron Paul folks. For a while, they were, your Pat Buchanan's, your Pat Robertsons. Lynn Wood is out there speaking in front of audience saying that Joe Biden isn't even the president. It's somebody wearing a mask. He's out there saying that Donald Trump has control of the nuclear codes right now, that the Pope might be dead and Jeffrey Epstein might be alive. And local Republican insiders were telling me he's going to get about a quarter of the vote for that GOP chair race down there. When I went to talk to him and ask him about this, he told me that he knew Joe Biden wasn't president because the sun at noon should have been above his head and he was squinting. And this is just completely insane stuff. And he now, okay, doesn't have a majority within the party, but he has a strong minority. And then the majority is one step over from him, saying, okay, well, Donald Trump might not have the nuclear codes, but he did win. This is a mass delusion that is infecting the local Republican parties. And I think there was some hope after 1-6 that things would come back towards normal, and they seem to be getting worse.
Then let's talk about that infection, John. It's infecting the Republican Party, and as kooky as it may be, what if it is the norm? Right? Is the average American voter out there, Republican or Democrat, paying attention to this come 2022? Or are they going to be voting on whether or not their taxes got raised or if Biden's plan worked for them?
I think they're going to be voting mostly on policy issues. And I think a lot of Republicans right now are ignoring what are obviously conspiracy theories because they disagree with Joe Biden's policy and they agree with Donald Trump's policy. Let's remember that, for the vast majority of Americans who vote, really the election day or the weeks before the election are the only time they're really paying attention to policy or politics at all. But then how dangerous
is that? How dangerous is that? If your average American only pays attention on Election Day and they say, do these policies make me smarter, better, and put food on my table? What happens if all of this craziness then says, oh, well, the policies work, we can ignore the crazy?
It's very dangerous, I think, for the country, for the world, because we are the leader of the world as the United States. It's very dangerous that truth is not truth anymore for a large group of Americans, that one party in a two-party system essentially has a monopoly on small d democracy and small r republicanism. I mean, basically what you saw from Donald Trump was a rejection not only of the popular vote, but also of the Electoral College and the systems that underpin our entire country, not just in the election, but for 4 years before that. So I think we are in a fragile place in our democracy right now, and we will continue to be there so long as somebody who is the dominant leader of one party, and that's Donald Trump, continues to lie to people and walk them down the road of conspiracy theory.
Tim, quickly, one person who can save or protect Liz Cheney's position is House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He was just asked about whether or not they should vote on her position, and here's what he said.
There's no concern about how she voted on impeachment. That decision has been made. I have heard from members concerned about her ability to carry out the job as conference chair, to carry out the message. We all need to be working as one if we're able to win the majority.
You believe him, Tim?
Well, I mean, I think that's just a cute way of saying, well, she's got to lie now going forward, right? I mean, I think that he's right. Like, I think what he's trying to say is, look, yeah, exactly. And so that's the problem. I mean, it's not, couth to say that out loud. We're looking for Liz Cheney to start lying going forward. What she did in the past is fine. But that's what he's basically saying right there, that she could have survived the impeachment vote if then she went along with the program going forward about winking and nodding about Donald Trump down there in Mar-a-Lago. But she's not going to do that. And so I think that she's going to have a tough vote whenever they bring it up, probably next week.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.